I'm Claire. I love theater, education, and of course, literacy.
Hi, I'm Emily. I want to be a Spanish and French teacher, and I love producing text.
I'm TJ. I'm going to be a physics teacher, and I love active learning.
All right, so let's go ahead and start for today.
At 11 o'clock on a weekday morning, a couple hundred college students are settling down in a lecture hall for chemistry class.
All right, so last time we spent a lot of time talking about derivations and relating equations to each other. What we're going to do today is...
The lecture is one of the oldest forms of education there is, says Joe Reddish, a physics professor at the University of Maryland.
Before printing, someone would read the books to everybody who would copy them down.
But, he says, lecturing has never been an effective teaching technique. And now that we can find information everywhere, Reddish and a few others say lecturing is pretty much a waste of time. Some say the traditional lecture is so flawed it could, or should, be on its way out.
Students were just memorizing the formulas and never really getting the concepts. The traditional lecture-based physics course produces little or no change in most students' fundamental understanding of how the physical world works.
It used to be just being the sage on the stage, the source of knowledge and information. We now know that it's not good enough to have a source of information.
Mazur sees himself now as the guide on the side, a kind of coach working to help students understand all the knowledge and information that they have at their fingertips. And, he says, this new role is a more important one.
Learning is not a spectator sport. Students do not learn much just by sitting in class, listening to teachers, memorizing pre-packaged assignments, and spitting out answers. They must talk about what they are learning, write about it, relate it to past experiences, apply it to their daily lives. They must make what they learn part of themselves.
I think if you can get kids to be creative in interacting with the text, you can get them to develop some pretty impressive skills. From there you can hone these skills, wean them off the text consumption aspect, and have them producing completely original works. But until they have some basis to work off, they are going to have some trouble initially.
I assume the only way that would happen is if you go into the student-centered classroom, you're going to find that many of those do not use textbooks anymore. They use more of a resource that are available online or whatnot. So I guess you can think of it in that sense, where they're becoming producers instead of consumers. But other than that, I'm not sure.
Well, the best thing you can do is have them produce text. Any kind of text at all. Songs, comics, poems, advertisements. They will naturally be able to create something based off of the text that they've already consumed.
The sort of teaching we propose requires that we encourage active learning and that we become knowledgeable about the ways in which our students hear, understand, interpret, and integrate ideas.
A science active learning classroom is one in where the students are the primary, I guess you'd say almost leaders of the classroom. In other words, you're not going to have a talking head in front of them. There's going to be very limited lecturing. The students are going to be engaged. They're going to actually be doing science instead of just hearing about science.
All genuine learning is active, not passive. It is a process of discovery in which the student is the main agent, not the teacher.
One view of active learning in the physics classroom consists of students investigating mathematical relationships between variables. By physically collecting data, the students are doing science the way it's meant to be done, not with a cookbook procedure, but with a sense of exploration and discovery.
Students are putting what they learn into action. The students may have a worksheet or lecture format for the more basic instructions and lessons, for example, vocabulary or history, but most of the time the students aren't listening and sitting, but getting up and doing. Now, this may take the form of acting exercises, walking around to get into your body, physical stretches or yoga, vocal exercises, monologues, scenes. In theater, it's all about getting up and doing the thing that you want to get better at. Practice is a necessity. and visualizing the process, whether it be acting, stagecraft, design, or directing, is just as important as visualizing the end result.
Hola, profe. ¿Cómo está?
Hola, Emily. Bien, ¿y tú?
Muy bien. Tengo algunas preguntas.
Dime.
What does active learning look like?
Well, active learning in the Spanish classroom is usually when they are very involved. Students are using the language and producing the language and engaging. They do something with information, listen with a purpose, and they produce their own ideas to back up points that they've already made. They read, then use it, interpersonal writings, and they also give suggestions.
How often do you produce texts versus consuming?
It really depends on the unit. It depends on the objective. We see what students need and then we assess that. Something specific with vocab versus a current event, we try to give them things that are doable and with purpose. That's key to remember. Students try to get to their objective, and we go to active learning first and then see if that will fit with the unit. It doesn't always fit. U-High puts more of an emphasis on technology, which is more active learning. Their initiative has been pushed with technology, but currently it is reflective learning, and that's not really active. Students just reflect on what they are doing and why. It's more based on themselves, but U-High doesn't have a direct initiative for active learning, but we try and focus on whole skills and whole language development. It's easier in the higher levels of Spanish, of course, to listen to authentic things and make authentic texts. And it's really important for students to create and actively engage and enjoy what they are doing.
Benefit is because research has shown that sitting through a lecture, students learn or retain very little. So in order for true learning to occur, the students must take ownership of the learning. They must be engaged in the learning, and that doesn't happen in a traditional classroom. So it has to be a student-centered, student-engaged classroom. Well, in order for the students to take ownership, they're going to have to do some prior work or planning coming into the class. So that's going to require some readings and some research that needs to be done, which lends itself naturally to literacy.
I think active learning is really the best way to get students to cement what they've learned. If they can take a concept, frame it under a different but specific circumstance, then mold it into their own personal definition, they're going to have a much deeper grasp of what it is they're learning than simply by reading it out of a book. Active learning gives meaning through experience. The students are engaged in their tasks, and that sense of autonomy helps them to naturally hold on to the information better. They have a sense of ownership of their work. They're using energy to learn, and they're developing their own perspectives based on their active learning experience.
What are the benefits of active learning?
There are many benefits to active learning, especially in the Spanish classroom. Students seem more interested. They love to debate and become informed about certain things. They learn faster and more sophisticated with active learning and production. They find their own texts, and that gives them ownership and pride. Texts are current events, cultural discussions, and it's very student-centered. It's more authentic if the teacher uses it correctly.
One must learn by doing the thing, for though you think you know it, you have no certainty until you try.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.